I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. Got to get a roll call?
Mr. Appel. Dr. Armstrong is present. Mr. Birkin. Mr. Castillo.
Here.
Ms. Champagne is not present. Dr. Clark is not present. Mr. Harris. Mr. Hollis, not present. Ms. Holloway. Ms. Mellering. Mr. Morris.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Could I get a motion, please? Senator Appel, Mr. Harris, thank you. Next item, please. First item.
The first item on the agenda is introduction. Good morning, members. I wanted to take a little time to take a few seconds to introduce the staff. You will see on the first slide. Am I controlling this thing? I'm sorry. First item, 1.1 is introductions. And I just want to take a few seconds to introduce the staff. Ms. Kimberly Trapeau is the 8G director and the most senior person in the office. We have Ms. Carla Anderson and Ms. Abby Petit. They are our 8G, our administrative and research associates. They help us with a lot of the back office functions and handling all of your financial matters and processing and interfacing with the Division of Administration. We have Ms. Daria Martin, who is the 8G administrator and BESE administrator. She serves a dual role in that she manages both of the budgets for 8G and BESE operations. She's supported by Ms. Jada Joseph, who is the auditor in the office and audit all the 8G programs. We have the 8G grant manager, Ms. Tiffany Bosley, who serves as the point person and interface with all the school systems and programs. Of course, we know Max Dupuy, the operations manager. He handles all things making the office run smoothly, making sure all of your meals, lodging, per diems are all satisfied. So if there's any complaints, don't blame me, just blame Max. And of course, we have the most handy person in the office. He's the communication manager, Kevin Colbert, but he is our support structure who manages and makes sure that we satisfy all of our compliance efforts by making our meetings public, handling the board docs, and getting the agendas ready, and supporting all of our IT needs. And I'm forgetting Miss Erin LeBlanc sitting next to me, who is the records manager. She maintains all of the records for the agency and ensuring that, ensuring that all of our records are maintained properly. And Ms. Shannon Rawson, who is the education administrator, she is being inundated now with certification, background checks, and handling all of our board packets and policies, putting that together for us. So I wanted to take an opportunity to introduce the staff, because a lot of times the staff is working behind the scenes and a lot of folks don't know the good work that they do, and I wanted to say thank you publicly to them. They've made my first 60 days very smoothly, and I wanted to bring them down to just introduce them to everyone so everyone could get opportunity. And so what I will do as we go along in the presentation, they will be presenting and not me, because I want them to have an opportunity to interface with everyone to see the good work and display the good work that they do. So that's what I have for introductions.
Thank you, sir. Members, any comments? All right, we don't have any public comment. Next item, please.
1.3, consideration of discussion regarding BESE operations and budgets.
Can I get a motion, please, for this one? Mr. Birkin, and a second, Mr. Harris. All right.
Thank you, members. So what you have before you in the slide deck, we will talk about BESE operations. More particularly, we will discuss our current budget situation. As many of you know or may not know, we've been asked by the division to do a simulation of budget reductions and Daria, correct me if I'm wrong, 1%, 3%, and 5%. So I think it was important to start with the discussion where we are currently with the budget. And then we will move into where we think we can support or not support a budget reduction allocation. But I think it's very, very important that you see that the budget that we currently have is very nimble, it's very lean, and Daria will go over historically where the budget was and where the budget is currently sitting, both on the admin side, that's the state general fund side, and the 8G side of the house. So with that, I will yield to Daria. Hit your mic. Press.
Okay, there we go. Good morning. I wanted to give you all just a little general overview of the budget process. Okay, so in October of each year, we develop the budget to submit to the Division of Administration, the Office of Planning and Budget Office. And in October, at the October meeting, we asked the board for approval to submit it to them on November 1st. That's the deadline. And we work with members, we work with everyone to see what we need for the office, and so that I could submit it by the November 1st deadline. And then after we submit the budget in November, in December, I'll come back and I'll give a summary of what we submitted to the DOA. And that goes into the legislative session that would start that following year. And it can go through all kind of changes, of course, as you all know, before it's actually approved by the governor in July, and then it's approved in June, and then it's appropriated in July. And then in August, I would come to the board and give them a summary of actually what was approved by the governor's office. But beginning at the last August meeting, we decided that we would give a quarterly report of the budget, so we kind of see what we are at like throughout the year, to kind of give members a more overview and kind of assessment of where we're at. Okay, so basically we have two funding streams in the BESE office. We had administration and 8G. Our administration funds are used to provide basic, I call it the meat and potatoes of the office, because that's where most of our administrative funds are used. And our other funding source is 8G, but most of that is flow to the schools and the state agencies. But I would say like the bulk of our money is the admin function. And we have these funds because we help the board to carry out their statutory requirements and stuff. It's to support the board. And then with 8G, those funds are used to enhance elementary and secondary programs. And like I said, most of them are flowed through to the school districts or the State Department. And we have a small piece that we use for administrative funds. So within the administration program, we have State General Fund direct dollars. And that's the bulk of our money that we use to support the board. But it's only 6% of the overall budget, so it's a little over $1 million. Another part of the admin program is fees and self-generated money, and that comes from funds that we lease out 5 buildings to other agencies, community agencies, and these buildings used to be BESE's properties when we were over all the community and technical colleges. But most of those properties were transferred to LCTCS, but just over time, we found that we didn't transfer all of them, and there are actually agencies that are using the buildings. They're very old buildings, we don't need them. We lease it to them, and they only have to pay us risk management premiums, and we remit that to the Office of Risk Management, and that reduces our ORM bill. And like if there are any disasters or, something that they need, any insurance claims that they have to submit, then I'll work with them as kind of like an intermediary between us and risk management. But that's the only thing that we do with those funds.
And not to interrupt Daria, but the staff have made a concerted effort to attempt to divest ownership of these buildings to the folks that are using them. It is my opinion that, we shouldn't own the buildings. If they're leasing them long-term, why not just transfer them? So we have one that has been, and I can't recall where it is, but there's one property that we are working to transfer that to the municipality if they want it. Where
I believe that's Natchitoches.
Natchitoches?
I
Yeah.
believe that's.
And so these properties are being used by a municipality or another agency, but they're owned by BESE. And it's 4 or 5 of them, and essentially they pay us, the rent is the ORM premium, so it's a budget neutral situation. But as Daria mentioned, if something happened on those properties, it would be a BESE claim, and we would have to get involved. So just to eliminate the bureaucracy, we're gonna come back to you once those things get teed up for transfer, for your official authorization to transfer those properties to the folks who are actually utilizing those properties.
Exactly.
But just for clarification, at this point, what we're hearing is that the revenue to run the administrative component is roughly $1 million annually.
That's right.
Okay.
State General Fund direct dollars. And then there's like the 50,000 for the properties, the self-generated funds. And then we also have the Louisiana Charter School Startup Loan Fund. That's 218,000, but that's just a loan for startups, so they have to pay it back. We give them out, they can request up to $100,000 over a 3-year period. And the money is, it's 1/3 of it is due each year for 3 years, but it's only for startup expenses. And we received the last payment, so we have no outstanding loans now. But like I said, it's just a lot of the schools don't necessarily request the money because it is a loan. But it's still part of our budget. But that 218,000 is just for that.
It's non-discretionary.
Exactly, right. We have
But then
to
the
use it.
50,000 you said for the leases, my understanding was that was really just pass-through.
It is, yes. So we collect the checks, we bill them, we get the amounts from ORM of how much they have to pay each year. We bill them, they send us a check, we deposit it, and we remit the money to ORM, risk management, and then we pay the remaining of our bill. So we reduce that 50,000 from our bill, and then we pay the remaining, like for our office.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And so that kind of went into the other, the administrator, like I was saying about the Louisiana Charter School Startup Loan Fund. That's the third part of our administration program. And like I said, no loans have been requested or distributed since 2021, and they've been fully repaid. And then our next program is the 8G Fund, and we use those funds to support and enhance elementary and secondary education in the public schools and also the non-public schools. And we have 2 funding methods. We have the block grant and we have the statewide program. The block grant provides funds for projects that serve as catalysts to enhance education. And they're given to the school districts, to the non-public schools, directly from the BESE office. But we also have the statewide program, and that's given to other state agencies, mainly the Department of Education, and they administer those funds. Most of our HG funds are flowed through to the school districts, over 96%, but we do have a small portion that we use for management and oversight in the office, but that's limited to no more than 3% of the previous 3 fiscal year actual expenditures. And the reason why they set that in statute, because they wanted to limit the amount of administrative costs. We wanted as much to flow out to the schools as possible. So that's where we got that limitation from. And on average, most of the money is flowed out. About 96% is flowed to the schools through either the block or the statewide program. And this is just a chart that shows the means of financing it's like for a historical period, by the different categories. We have the State General Fund Direct, which is currently in 2020, the actual amount was close to $1,991,000, And currently, and when fiscal year 2024, it was 1.1 million is what we actually spent, and our current budget is 1.15 million for general fund direct, and then we have the fees and self-generated, the startup loan fund, and then HG is which the bulk of our money. The HG budget is currently 20.5 million. Last year, we actually spent 19.5 million of that. And I'll go into more detail about each. I just wanted to kind of give a historical view of it. And the next slide just shows the different expenditures by categories. So the first one is our administrative program and our state general fund direct. The majority of our expenses goes to salaries and benefits, to other compensation, which is per diem, and travel. And then we have a small amount that we use for like supplies and operating expenses. And then we have fixed costs that goes to other state agencies in our IAT category. So that totals that 1.15 million. And so then I'll kind of go through each category that we have. In personnel services, that's 68% of our state general fund direct budget. And that includes administration, salaries and benefits, as well as board per diem, and responsibilities related to board activities. And we always note when we're doing the budget request that our board members don't receive salaries or benefits. They only receive per diem, and it's a small amount. It's based on the GSA rate, and currently it's $164 a day. But that's the majority of our money is in personnel services. Then we have about 5% of the budget is travel. And that travel, which is about $53,000, it includes staff travel for meetings. It includes, we also have to pay the non-public school commission their travel when they attend the meetings. And then, of course, board member travels for the meetings and things outside of the meetings.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
On the 19.7 million that flows to the schools, how does that, what does it go toward? The schools get it as we know we get MFP. What is that money used for?
Yes. And so there are constitutional categories that they have to make sure that their programs are written for, because each school gets an allocation based on their student count. This is for the block grant. And they also get a per pupil amount. They get a per pupil amount, and then they get a base amount. And then they all get an equal chance of getting the funds. And then they have to write proposals to say like what they're really going to use the funds for, and it has to fall within the different categories, the constitutional categories that we have. And then our board, staff members, they'll approve that. And so a lot of them will use it for salaries and benefits for pre-K. That's a big initiative, but they could use, some will use it for other things like remediation, or, it's different categories that they could use it for, but they have to write the proposal to fit within our constraints. And then on the statewide side, they still have to follow those categories, but the department kind of decides what their initiatives are, what they can use the funds for, and then they'll write, their proposal for that.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Yes, sir. Senator Rappel?
The HE funds, are those in any way dedicated, or are they strictly subject to appropriation every year?
They're dedicated. They're stat dead funds, so they have to be, used for a certain purpose, but they are allocated each year. So we, when we're doing our budget requests, we'll put in what we would like based on the revenues. A lot of it is what we, the prediction that we get from the state treasurer's office about the investments and how they're doing. So we use that to calculate the amount that we request.
I see.
for.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Just following up on my colleagues' questions, can you help us appreciate a little bit better the work process, how the grants are reviewed, and what the timeline is?
Okay.
So that's going to come later in the slides.
Yeah, that's more.
Sorry, getting ahead a little bit.
Oh, no, that's okay. Okay. And then we have operating services. That's about 3% of the budget. And that's for things like board subscriptions, like our board docs, electronic signatures that we use, like Panda that we use, phones, printing when we mail packets. So all that is included in there, copier rental. And then we have a small amount for supplies. It's only 1% of our budget. It's $8,500, which is not very much. But that's for general office supply, as well as like snacks and things, different things for the board meeting. The drinks, the meals, all that is included in that $8,500, which we usually spend a little more than that. But we do try to stick with that budget, else we'll have to ask for a budget adjustment. And then 23% of the state general fund budget is the IAT expenditures, and those are fixed costs. It's like for building rent, for telephones, for email services, things that are provided by other state agencies that we have to pay, legislative auditor fees, things like that. And our next funding stream is the 8G program. And that's out of the 20.5 million. And we also have, and part of that, like the salaries, the other comp, the benefits, that's part of our administrative funds that we could use. And I also wanted to know that a portion of the expenses for like our salaries and benefits and also our IAT expenses, it's proportion between administration and 8G. The first one, administration funds for management and oversight, and also review and evaluation services. Because besides what the staff does, we also have outside evaluators that review the program for, to make sure that they're running like they said they would. So they give a programmatic review, and we use those administrative funds to also pay them. And we also have our auditor, our own financial auditor. She will go out and approve and review the programs. But all of that falls within the review and evaluation services, as well as what our staff does to review the proposals and to make sure everything is running right. So that is approximately $775,000 that we use for those categories, and it's about 4% of the budget. And the remaining 96% or 19.7 million are flow-through dollars. So we do try to, get as much money flowing to the recipients as possible. And of that $775,000, personnel services come out of that. 100% of the employees that work on 8G, their salaries are paid. But we also have a portion of the employees that work with the administration side because they handle 8G a little bit. So a portion of their salary is also charged to the administrative component of that. And then we also have a small amount that we use for travel, for either workshop meetings, or we also, our grant manager, she'll go out and review different agencies and help them with things that they need. So her travel will come out of that budget. And then with operating services, we have, it's kind of similar things. We split some of the costs, the general costs for operating the office with AG. And we also have our grant management system for AG that comes out of operating services. And we use a small amount, about $1,000 for general office supplies for the program. And then other charges, those are the payments to our AG contractors that does the programmatic evaluations, and also our auditor travel. We have that in that category. She does the fiscal and compliance monitoring each year. And then, of course, the IAT, and that's the fixed overhead cost for the office, to the other state agencies, and that's a split between admin and HE also. And then of the 19.7 million, the funds are
question.
usually allocated equally between the block program and the statewide program. Of course, that's up to you all. We bring that in October. We just ask you to let us formulate the budget, and we get an overall amount for AG. But then we'll come back usually in December and do an actual breakdown of the different categories. And most of the time, it's a split between the block program and statewide program. But you all will get input on, we'll give recommendations, and, you know, you'll decide how you want to allocate those funds.
Quick
Mr.
question
Mr.
for you.
Castillo?
Yes. The $480,000 for salaries, does that include the 8G salaries also?
Yes, that does. And a portion of the admin hours, just a small portion of theirs.
So to answer your question directly, there's some of us, for instance, like myself, my salary is braided between the admin side and a little bit from
Yep.
the AG side. So when she said
So-
100%, anyone who's functioning full-time on the AG side, 100% of their salary comes out of the AG funds. But there are some of us that come out of both sides.
Right.
But for
Like
all
our-
employees, it's a total of $480,000, irrespective of the source of the funding.
No.
No,
That's,
Okay,
no.
that's what I was trying to get.
that's correct.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So the 488,000 represents the 8G staff, which is 3 people, plus me and Daria. And then the admin side represents everyone else. I said that correctly?
Yes, it does, but like I said, it's just a percentage. Like with our auditor, 100% of her salary is, it's strictly AG, none that goes on the admin, because she strictly works with auditing. But with people like Tavares or myself or Aaron, all that, a portion of this, like maybe like I would say 5 to 15% of their salary is also allocated to AG. So it does include, that is the AG part, but it does include a little bit of admin. But since the majority is AG, we just say like that's the AG portion.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. President, so going back to slide 10, noticing the AG is, numbers are always changing. In 2020, is at 22 million, down at 16, and 13, 12, up to 19, now up to 20.5. So is that subject to what the state obviously receives or thinking they're going to receive off the offshore?
Yeah, it does.
And we get a certain percentage of that kind of thing?
Right, yes. And so we use each year we'll get an estimate of the estimated income from the state treasury's office. And we also use what the REC committee, what they recommend. And we consider what we have in our carryover. So let's say in the treasurer's office, they're usually very conservative. But I'd rather be conservative because when we build a budget, we're building in on estimates. We don't start the money, like if we have a $20 million budget, typically we don't start with 20 million for the year because revenue is deposited each month. But we also have to keep in mind that the money, we also have a carryover fund. So if we don't use all of the money, each year it'll carry over. So when we're formulating the budget, we're looking at what they're projecting for the current year, but also what we know like we'll have in our carry forward. So what happened in 2021, there was a big capital gain sale that the treasurer's office did. So they sold a lot of our investments. And so we had a large influx of money over our regular revenue. So like last year, I want to say they estimated about 16 million, but we still kept it at the 20 million because we had carry forward money and we monitor what we receive each month to make sure they're kind of online with the estimates. But so it fluctuates because of the investments and the royalties are fluctuating. But we do have with our carryover we try to keep it stable because we don't want to have large dips over time, you know, for the school districts. So we try to keep it kind of level, but also knowing that a lot of it is estimates. So we have to monitor what we're really receiving.
Is this where we should put the board salaries?
Well, that's
Was that a
not-
motion,
yeah,
Mr.
I was gonna
Birkin?
say, 'cause most of it is a flow through
I
to
don't
the
think
schools.
the statute allows
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Actually, it is a prohibition in the statute.
Oh, absolutely, yes, and right, and it is capped on that 3%. So it has to be, it can be no more than 3% of the prior 3 years of actual expenditures. And they did that for a reason, to make sure most of the money goes to the school districts. So we are capped, and even they're very specific in the in the regs, because we can't use AG funds for direct expenses for you all. So any travel, per diem, we're prohibited. We have to use general fund. So it's very, it's another funding stream, but it's very, we can't just use it for.
So following Mr. Birkin's question, most of what I see on here, there's a column for budget, but I don't see anything for actuals. And you mentioned that we do work with a cushion. Can you help us appreciate a little bit how we, and understand there's fluctuation in this? So can you help us?
And you're talking about the AG budget in
Right.
specific? Yeah.
Yeah. So can you help us appreciate a little bit about how we typically compare to actuals? How much is
I can-
typically carried over? And how much are we working with the cushion? How much cushion is there out there to
I actually
manage
have
that
another
volatility?
presentation just for AG budget, like building a budget, and I go through all of that.
Okay.
So it may be better to.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And so Derry and I have been working on the simulation, so just give a high-level overview of your thoughts of the actual amounts of what a reduction would look like, the 1 to 3 and the 5%.
Okay.
And where do you believe that would come from? Just a high-level overview so
Right.
they can appreciate that.
Okay. But what you were talking about at first was 8G. We're
Yes.
talking about the cut, when we're talking about the cuts, we're talking about just for state general fund
That's
direct
right.
money.
That's right.
Okay, yeah. So, so they asked the division, they asked for a proposal for us if we would have to take a 1 to 5% cut from our discretionary state general fund amount of $901,204, and that's just discretionary. And that would equate to 1% is about $9,000, 5% is about $45,000. And since the majority of our funds are used either salaries, benefits, per diem, or travel for the board members, it would have to come out of one of those categories, which to sustain a $45,000 cut in our state general fund direct would be detrimental, to us, because we've already been cutting in the past when we've had budget cuts. We've reduced the number of board meetings. We've reduced our mailing costs, our operating expenses. We've when we had vacancies, we would just no longer feel that. So we've reduced staff over time over the last decade when we've had all the costs, all the cuts, and so we really, in our proposal, would just ask them not to, and we would tell them the impact that it would have. We may have to reduce, any further reduction in staff would just be detrimental to us. And I gave them a synopsis of, so in 2008, we had 17 employees, and we've reduced that to 11 employees since 2017 throughout. So we've been operating, with 11 employees for a while. And so either we would have to cut some, in our personnel, or the per diem payments, which the board members, they don't receive salaries or benefits. It's just per diem. And we're already not fully funded for per diem. We're only funded for $60,000. And they do, when the division allocates the money, they do base it on what we've actually used in those categories. And in the past, some of the board members, they just elected not to receive, all of their per diem and stuff. So they do base it off of actual. But if we would cut per diem even further than that, we just would not be able to sustain it, what you all have to do. So we just kind of really stress how that would look. And we never know. We know we're probably going to take a cut. I just think that they know, the division knows how lean our budget is. We don't have a bunch of cushion, for other things. So I would think maybe the 1% cut, but I don't think, I know we couldn't sustain a 5% cut, and I don't think they would ask for that much, but we are prepared to, stress that we can't sustain it because of where the majority of our money, it's not even enough our salaries, our supplies. If they would take all of our supply budget, it's only $8,500. That wouldn't get, to the amount. So we don't have many areas that they could cut in. So that's what I'm hoping, that they would just not give us the full 5%.
Daria,
Yes.
wish list.
I know, yes, yes.
So we have our block grants that go directly to our school districts that we determine the prioritization of. If we have, and I don't want to say the word surplus, because I know, but if we have some carry over, do we ever go back and give those competitive grants to the schools to be able to use those? Or could we?
We could possibly, that's a possibility. We used to do that, those programs.
We used to do that.
And yes, because in the past, we used to have like $40 million budgets. We used to have a competitive program. It was really good because then it gave a lot of the smaller agencies a chance to compete, for those extra dollars, for those extra projects that they wanted. So it is possible, and the staff, the HG staff, because we know that even though we give all the agencies money, we allocate them a certain amount, they don't all accept it. A lot of the smaller schools, they may not. And so, but we would know that until, almost mid-year when, I would say like October, November, when all the proposals are in and we've reviewed them, then we would see, like, we would have some money left over, but it's kind of late to go back in that year and then try to start, a whole new process of like what to do with those funds. But we could, if there was like a board initiative that you all wanted, like with the extra money, the unallocated money that we could use, we could do something maybe for that, for that school year. But we have been talking, AG staff, we've been trying to see like what we could do with some of those funds that they don't use. Now, the good thing, we don't lose them. It goes back into the pot and we can reallocate it the next year. But it's possible if we would have to do a different split. If you wanted to get the competitive, like, out of the money now, but that would be less that we would be able to give in block and in statewide. So, but that is a possibility. But it's also a possibility we could think of something we could do with just the unallocated money, like that they just didn't accept. And it may not be that much. Usually it's around 200 to 300,000 sometimes that'll just go left, unexpended. But we could possibly, so we're open to any, anything that you all may want to do.
I think in the past, it helped for focused programs with the smaller districts or the individual schools.
Right.
So
Yes.
that's something just to process
Yeah,
as we.
and maybe even if it was just maybe $1 million to do just,
Every
it's
little bit
possible,
helps.
yeah. We can definitely talk through that. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you,
and-
Daria.
Okay.
Members, any other questions before we move on? All right, hearing none. Mr. Walker?
All right, next up is Ms. Kimberly Trapeau. She will talk more about 8G and talk specifics about the programmatic side. Daria addressed the financial side. Now she will talk about the programmatic side and the type of programs that we fund through the AG program.
Good morning. Kim Trapeau, and I'm here to provide a brief overview of 8G. Daria did a very, very good job. So some of the things that you will hear will be a little repetitive as we start, but we'll move on, I think, to some of the things that you had some questions regarding. All right. So we often hear 8G. What does that really mean? 8G refers to an amendment to the Federal Outer Continental Self-Lands Act, which provides coastal states of Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas with a fair and equitable share of mineral revenues from offshore development. In 1986, Louisiana voters dedicated these federally awarded funds through a state constitutional amendment for the improvement of state education, which became known most recently as the Kevin P. Riley Senior Louisiana Education Quality Trust Fund. The AG money is received from the federal government, and it flows to the permanent trust fund. The interest of the trust flows to the support fund, which then is divided between the Board of Regents and BESE. BESE has established a structure to review, award, and administer the AG funds to eligible schools and state agencies through the block and statewide grant program. Since 1986, BESE AG has grown from $8.2 million to as high as $40 million annually, funding over 9,800 projects. As Daria mentioned, there are constitutional categories, and so the AG funds are allocated through these categories. Most often, agencies develop and implement projects under exemplary programs, school remediation pre-K programs, and pilot programs. There are also priority areas that the projects or programs will fall under, such as high-quality early education, technology and innovation, college and career readiness, teacher leadership development, STEM, and strategies for literacy and numeracy. So when we look at this particular fiscal year, 24-25, we have the staff, the AG manager and the AG director who review and approve AG proposals, and we review the block proposals. So I think to answer Mr. Morris a little bit about the process, the agencies receive an allocation in April or May, and then they write a proposal, again, based on those constitutional categories, the needs in their schools as it relates to the priority areas. After which time, they are submitted to us through our online grant system. The staff reviews, approves it, and then they're free to move forward with their funding, or with their project. Our funding is reimbursable, so they have to incur the expense, and then we reimburse them for that, okay? This particular year, we have approximately 143 block grants that are going to be approved, and we have 8 statewide programs that are going to be approved. The board approves the statewide programs. So you'll notice in April, June, August, and October that there are statewide programs that come before the board for your approval. The allocation this year, as Daria said, is $20.5 million. We have our auditor who goes out and examines the various financial documents from agencies and conducts audits for compliance for the prior year. And then we hire independent evaluators who go out and review the proposals, conduct site visits to assure and to assess the students' performance results. Those results are compiled and they will be presented to the board in December.
Ms. Kim, can you give the board an appreciation of some specific programs just off the cuff?
So for instance, a lot of the programs, as Daria stated, are pre-K programs. A lot of them are still using their AG funds to service pre-K. There are some times when they'll do some professional development for different activities. You'll see coming up, there may be some in October, not tomorrow, this is October. In the board meeting, there's going to be the School for the Deaf. They're going to use some of their funding for pacing and preparing their teachers for unpacking units and different things like that. So those are some types of things they may do. If there's an area where a school feels a need for remediation, if they're feeling like their scores are low, then they may run some type of an after-school remediation or intervention program and use their AG funds to support stipends for teachers or something of that nature.
And secondly, because we've gotten this request a couple times from members, can you just give members an appreciation of how we deal with public versus non-public and the sectarian issue?
Okay, so we have schools that have a religious base and we consider them pervasively sectarian. So they're restricted on what they can purchase. So their purchases are limited to equipment 250 or more, or textbooks or textbook substitutes. So, if you're a public district or you can purchase whatever you'd like, basically, but a pervasively sectarian diocesan systems, independent schools who, again, have a religious base are considered pervasively sectarian, and they are limited in what they can purchase with their AG funds. And that's another reason why we try to have a variety of focus areas to give them a little leeway as to what they can purchase. Okay? And as we move to 25, 26, because as we're working in this year, we're also preparing for next year. So in December, you're going to see the budget for 25, 26 coming up. So what happened is that in August, that's where we start building the budget for the upcoming year. So in August of 2024, we had a public hearing. That allowed the public to come out and share with you their ideas for 8G and how they felt 8G funding could be used. From there, the executive director and staff will consult with the board president and his designees regarding recommendations for the amounts and the focus areas that can be used for 25-26. As I said, the allocation will be presented in December, and then the approved program and budget needs to be submitted to the legislature 60 days prior to the session. Okay. Any questions?
Any questions?
Yeah. Members, any questions here?
All right. Okay. Mr.
Yeah,
Walker.
just a clarification.
I'm sorry.
I wanted to make sure I had alignment with Mr. Walker on the timeline here. So members, on the second bullet, the consultation with the BESE president and his designees, I'm advised that that'll be coming forward in November. So that'll be an opportunity for you to provide input
Okay. And-
before it comes to us in December for approval.
Correct. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
that. Thank you for that clarification. And at this time, I believe Ms. Martin is going to go back through her building of the budget for 25-26.
So this is the, building the 8G, budget that we were talking about.
Oh, you had given them a handout.
Yes, I gave them a handout. I don't have the presentation. And so like I said, in November 1st, by November 1st, we have to submit our budget to DOA. And we work, during this month, we work with the board members to agree upon a budget amount total for 8G. And so the first step, when I get the estimate from the treasurer's office, they'll send a letter that'll talk about what's been going on with investments and their insight on what they think the revenue will be for the upcoming year. And I use that as well as what the REC gives us for all their funds, because they also do a projection of it. And I kind of compare those two. So in September, so last month, they gave us their estimate for next year, the treasurer's office, which is 16.5 million. And that's on attachment 1. That's in your packet. And I compared that with what the REC estimated. Their estimation was a little lower than the treasurer's office of 15 million. But I do take both of those into account as well as our carry forward amount. And then I look at what we actually spent. So I'll take these estimates that they gave me, what we actually spent in 23-24, which is on attachment 3, and that was 17 million. And it was, that was slightly higher than what the treasurer projected last year, which was 16.3 million. And so that extra amount just went into our carry forward, part of what we call our carry forward. And so even though we're recommending that we maintain a $20 million budget for 26, the current budget is 20.5. And even though that's more than the treasurer's estimate and the REC estimate, we try to keep the funding stable. And we know that we had a large carry forward from the fiscal year 21 when we had that large sale of investments. So that gave like a $10 million boost to our carry forward amount. So we used that to build. So instead of starting from scratch each year, we know we'll have, like for this year, we started with should I have so many numbers on it? Okay, like the 18, about 18 million is in our actual account. And so we're not starting even like,
Is the 18 million our cushion that we're working with?
yes, that's our right. And part of that is because of the significant carry forward that we have. So like the actual revenue in the account right now is 18.5 million. So that 18.5 million is used to fund our current budget of 20.5 million. And that amount, it almost covers what we need for this year. But that would take all our money. And so then we start building. If that was it, that's not, but we get money each month. We get revenue. And
But your
that goes
current
into the
balance is 18 million, is what I
That's right.
understand. And then
Yes.
from that current balance, that's basically the cushion that you work with.
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
You're welcome. And then I monitor what we actually get each month to go in. And I kind of do an estimate of what I think the carry forward will be starting in next year, in '26, with all the factors that I talked about. I think we'll start with probably about 12 million. And so even though the treasurer's estimate for next year was the 16.5 million, because we're going to start with a high carryover and we'll have revenue deposits each month, I think we can reach the 20 million if we keep it at 20. Because,
But you still got a $5 million debt that you're going to carry, right?
right,
Yeah,
right. And then we're still going to get money each year.
got it.
And I know the royalties they're projecting, it's dwindling because of where like 8G is located in that little area. They're doing more offshore drilling. And so they know like the royalties are going to go down, but the investments seem pretty stable. So I feel pretty comfortable that we can, get the right amount of
So
revenue.
we still draw revenue from the balance that we maintain.
Right, yes, right. So like if you look at attachment,
Is that balance
I wanna say
in
third.
we have an account, or DOA?
the treasurer's office, yep.
It's at the treasurer's office.
That's right, yes. We can look
So-
at it, but we don't monitor. I mean, we don't do the investments, yeah. But they
So
invest it, they
we
maintain it.
don't have
and
control of it?
We don't have any control.
Interest earned and all that?
No,
stuff?
none of
I
that.
got
All
you.
that is done by the treasurer's office, and that's why we use his estimate. We rely on that heavily because they deal with it every day. We kind of, and we found that they're pretty on point with it.
And we do get an annual report at the joint BESE Board of Regents meeting annually.
That's right, yes, in December.
Mr. Appel?
Thank you. A slight aside on this, y'all were talking about the amount of funds that are available for distribution to the school districts and so forth. I got that.
Yes,
And it's been kind of flat
right,
for the last 5 years or so, from what I could see
Right.
from your numbers.
that's right.
But inflation has not been. So just as an aside, I think we all know, I'm just going to make up a number because I don't know the actual number, but we probably have been experiencing an average of maybe 4 or 5% inflation for the last 4 years. Aggregated, that might be 20%. So for the dollars available for impact, our contribution is flat,
Yeah,
steady,
right,
but the impact that they have has been reduced by, let's say, 20% over the last 4 or 5 years. So I just want to go on record for people to understand that while 5 years ago we may have been getting $20 million bang for our buck, we may be only getting $15 million bang for our buck today,
That's
based on the AG funds.
That's true. And that's why we try to stress, because it's just a one-year grant, and we try to stress that, like, it really should be used for innovative projects that maybe the districts can sustain, like just a little jump start, and then they could sustain it, moving forward, because it's just a
Non-recurring
one-year. Yeah,
expenses.
exactly. But a lot of them have gotten used to, using pre-K, using it for pre-K and try to, maintain that. And that's fine, but we just don't want them to keep being so dependent on it, because like you
Right.
said, that's not the money that we were giving them for pre-K to
Right,
fund the
there's a big
teacher.
difference between
It's a big
dollars and
difference.
impact, so-
Yes, I agree.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Harris?
On the carry forwards, at 18 million, is there something in statute that keeps that from the possibility of it being swept by the legislature?
There is something there. I know, and they've taken our money before, but it's a trigger. Like they have to have the state deficit has to be so much, and I believe they're capped at 5%. But we've had it a couple of times, but that's when we had the big deficits, we were having all the cuts, you know.
That was
about-
back in the general administration?
Yeah, I didn't want to, yes. back-
So they
back
did,
then.
they did sweep that?
They did, a couple times.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you said it was 5%?
Yeah, it could be no more than 5%, but that's in statute. Something has to trigger it, you know, and it's for overall for the state, not just us. And then they can start going into stat debt funds, because they can't touch stat debt unless the trigger is met. There's a trigger. So that's pretty, so I just wanted, you know, just to give you all the information and to kind of see how we can, because we try to keep the funding kind of stable. We don't want too many fluctuations up and down for the school districts. But I feel pretty confident if we kind of keep it at 20 million, we should be able to reach that by the end of next year.
Thank you, appreciate
Okay.
that. And we look forward to this November meeting where members can provide feedback into line items for that. And I would just encourage members, if you have any specific interest here to get involved in this, please reach out, share your interest with me so we make sure we get your input. Mr. Walker?
The next item is the rulemaking process. There will be lots of updates, and Ashley, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are 3 areas that's coming up in March, right? PE, English, and math. So there will be a lot of rulemaking that will take place because it's triggered by every 5 years, and I think we're on that point. And so what I wanted to do is have the staff who handles those things kind of give the members an overview of how rulemaking happens, how we amend the bulletins. We talked a little bit about it this morning, that, you know, even when we want a rule to go in place, it takes about 4 or 5 months for that to actually happen. And so these 2 professionals here will go over the rulemaking process. Well, how does it start and where does it end up? And I know you have an example in there, but if you can just touch upon 111 that we're currently in the middle of rulemaking and give the board some appreciation of the process.
Yes, sir. So here's an example of how a bulletin revision would be proposed. There could be a revision to a bulletin. We just said, for example, 741. So the LDOE staff would prepare the language and put it on the agenda for the Superintendent's Advisory Council meeting to get input and feedback from that group of individuals. And if necessary, make amendments as requested, and then they would submit it to us. After that, the staff would then place that on the agenda for one of your committees. For example, it would be placed on an AGII committee for that group to review and approve the policy or not. And then the board would consider the recommendations, and if approved, it would begin the NOI process. So once the board approves the policy, this begins the NOI process. It will be submitted to the register, and that has to be submitted on the 10th of the month by noon. And so we have a very hard deadline for that. So anything that would be on the agenda for tomorrow would not get submitted until November, because it would have to get sent across the street for Ashley to get approval from the Legislative Physical Office first. And then once we get that back, then we could submit that to the register on the 10th of the month. The register is printed on the 20th of the month, and the NOI has to be advertised for 90 days. In the first 20 days, public can submit comments pertaining to that particular policy. If no public comment is received, then the rulemaking process continues, and then it would be adopted as a rule. If public comments are received, for example, like in Bulletin 111, a public hearing was requested. If a public hearing is requested, we have between 35 and 45 days to hold that public hearing. So again, a very tight window. It would then be placed on the committee agenda again, as you will see tomorrow, for you to see the summary report and the response from the LDOE. If it is approved, then the NOI process just continues and it will become a rule. There could be a hearing, a legislative oversight committee hearing, and that would happen if that was requested. That could delay the rulemaking process, but if not, it will continue on the timeline, which is about 5 months from start to finish.
Can you help us to appreciate the trigger for the public hearing?
If there is a public comment received, there might not be one, but if it is requested specifically. And that would happen within the first 20 days.
You guys would need to get a request for a public hearing.
It's usually for a group of 30, 35 individuals or more.
Okay, so
It'd just be one person
that-
asking for a
that's what I
public
was trying to
hearing.
get to.
If it's just one person that inserts comments, we'll still do the SPCAR and it'll still go to you, but we don't have to hold a hearing necessarily.
Got it.
Quick question. Are these rules driven by the APA, or are these rules of BESE, only BESE?
The APA guidelines.
I'm
We
sorry.
use APA guidelines.
So we follow an APA guidelines. Okay, thank you.
So if there's a single public comment, then there's a SPCAR for a single public comment? And that comes
Yes.
back to the board for review? Okay, thank you. Members, any other comments on this one? All right, Mr. Walker?
All right, Shannon is going to go over the records review policy. Since I've been here, we've gotten what seems like a
been a
lot.
lot.
It's been a lot of requests.
This is just that time of year when the school year's starting over. It's
And there
just
were
that time of year.
some legislative changes that probably triggered some of this. So I'll also, because you will start to see an influx of those things, I wanted her to kind of go over her internal process and how things end up on the board's agenda for review.
Yeah, so statute states that the board has to revoke educator credentials whose criminal history check reveals a conviction for prohibited offenses or any felony conviction, doesn't matter what it is. And then statute also states that the board may issue an educator credential after successful appeal, given that 5 years have passed from the date of conviction or the determination of submission of fraudulent documents, facilitating cheating on assessments, so we can have that review process. Now, BESE policy does take it a step further, and we do not allow for appeals for any prohibited convictions as listed in RS 15587.1. So just kind of the operating procedures. Once I receive a declination and/or suspension from the LDOE, that starts the process. Now, they usually send me whatever they have, CBCs, notification letters, court documents, the professional conduct forms, any and everything that's pertinent to that declination or suspension. If it's a declination, then I don't do anything but just wait for the applicant to initiate the process. If it's a suspension, then we'll send a notification letter and place it on the agenda for the next, agenda for revocation. And then also just wait for them to initiate that records review process. The revocation is just, you have to do it, it's just a step in the process. And then once I'm contacted, I'll review the current documentation, ask pertinent questions concerning eligibility. I'll explain the process, and then send official emails to them, just kind of laying out everything they need, the letters of recommendation, all of that stuff for them to submit to me. And then once it's completed, I'll send them another notification letter, place it on the agenda for review, and that's when we go to our back there and we have our little powwow. And then also another layer to that is if the offense occurred over 10 years prior and there's nothing else on their record, then they may be issued provisional approval for 90 days subject to ratification by the board. The board reviews all cases concerning criminal conviction, licensure, submission of fraudulent documents, and cheating on state assessments in executive session unless otherwise requested. Usually we don't have any that want to do it in open session, thankfully. And then the action of the board is final decision and can only be appealed to a court of proper jurisdiction in accordance with the law. So your say is final as far as we're concerned. And then just finally, statute has us by December 31st of each year put this report detailing all of these offenses and all the appeals that we have seen for that calendar year on the BESE website. This used to be, there will only be one on our website because it changed recently. It used to be that we would send this report to House and Senate Ed. Now we just post it on our website, so. And that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you. Members, any questions? All right, Mr. Walker, anything to add?
Nothing.
Hearing none, there's no public comment, no exceptions. Next item, please.
Next item is 1.4, consideration of discussion regarding the planning of BESE outreach event. And Kevin and I will handle that one.
Can I get a motion, please? Ms. Mellerin, Mr. Harris, thank you. All right. Mr. Walker?
And so this is one that I have been personally involved with the heavy assistance of Kevin. One of the first things that I was asked to do when I got this job was to put together a BESE tour, but we struggled for about the last 40 days of figuring out what's a BESE tour. Just seemed kind of plain. So we enlisted the department, Ted and Sally and his staff, and they came up with the logo that you see before you and the title, which we're calling Bridging Success, Classroom to Career Connection Tour. And they are much more creative than we are, so they created the logo and the catchphrase, and I am really, really proud of the work and the collaboration that we've done for this program that we're going to put up. As a high-level overview is to introduce, if you will, BESE to the local world, business and industry, and to talk about and provide the local school districts with a white paper, if you will, or some drawing, some architect stuff, so they can fully understand and appreciate how they are going to implement the work-based learning requirements and things that's in the new accountability system. Throughout this tour, it's gonna be led by an individual BESE member in their local area. We will marry the school systems with local business and industry leaders. We have engaged many of the state partners, Lobby, LWC, LDOE, and the local leadership of the state chambers of commerce to help facilitate this effort. And Kevin will go over the mechanics of how the tour will happen, but it is a large undertaking that we will hopefully gain some knowledge and hopefully impart some knowledge on the local school system to help them better understand how we can support them, how local business and industry is looking for the talent, and how we marry those two things together. We've also engaged with some nonprofits who do this work and some business and industry leaders that have had some success with internship programs such as Empower Schools, ExxonMobil, U-Force, NOLA, and some other groups that we're going to bring to the table and kind of bring a buffet of options, if you will, for the local school districts to consider. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin to kind of work through the slides.
Morning, everybody. Mr. Morris brought this idea to us during the summer of pulling together the BESE tour to really, there's a number of objectives at play here, and the first is to promote the development and expansion of the work-based learning programs, the successful initiatives and internship and apprentice programs in schools throughout the state. It provides an opportunity to meet with the key players in business and industry and education in each BESE district, gives our board leadership and pulls the key players together to learn more about the existing work-based learning programs in the area, investigate options for the development of programs that best serve the needs of that specific community and student population, and involve the representatives of model programs, as Mr. Walker had indicated, to help address the how-to of how to put successful programs together and how best to approach doing this in each area and the challenges that may be encountered in putting these programs in place. Additionally, there will be the opportunity in these tour stops to meet with the leadership of schools and school districts to learn and discuss the unique issues and needs that they have that are related to the local implementation. And that just helps to support the development of quality programs and as well as compliance with the new requirements under the recent state accountability revisions. Not the least important will be the opportunity to observe firsthand and highlight successful career and technical education and work-based learning programs in each BESE district through on-site visits to schools and training centers. The way that we envision this beginning in the fall and going into the spring of next year is conducting Bridging Success regional events, at least one or two in each BESE district. And that's just a layout of the different geographic areas that we've identified. And we're in the process of identifying programs within those areas and the key players from business and industry and education, pull the groups together and have the programs highlighted. The numbers next to each description of the geographic area correspond to the BESE districts. There are several different components of what a tour stop would look like, and the first one would be a meeting with local businesses, business groups, and school district officials. The participants would be representatives of BESE, the department, and the Workforce Commission, as well as local and state officials and industry trade groups, whether that's local chambers, lobby, and members of the business community, as well as school district leadership. The purpose of this meeting would be to present the state's initiative to build and expand work-based learning programs, help to identify and determine the needs and interests of local businesses regarding job training, learn about the existing programs in the area, and discuss the local district approaches to work-based learning initiatives. The second component would be a school or training center site visit in each stop. This would be made up of the same participants, but it would be a public-facing event that would also, we would invite local media, and this would provide that firsthand observation of local facilities, programming, and instruction. And the main purpose there is to be able to observe these firsthand, but also to build awareness for the successful programs and promote the value of these throughout the state. And then we believe that a tour stop would also conclude with a follow-up recap meeting with local school district leadership. The participants there would be representatives of BESE and the department and school district leadership to talk about progress being made in the development of local apprenticeship and internship programs. Again, talk about what the unique needs in each of those areas and districts are. Express the state's vision for development and growth in this space, and clarify the related expectations under the new accountability system. And so that's an overview of what a tour stop would look like, and just wanted to
Mr.
open it
Harris?
up for discussion.
Yeah, it might be a good idea. I don't know if y'all thought about this, but this is going to be a BESE function. So maybe as BESE members, board members, I would suggest that the staff send out pre-meeting pressers to the local radios and TV stations to try to line up an interview with the BESE board members. And then as board members, 2 weeks, maybe before this meeting takes place, or even 3 or 1, go on your radio stations, go on your TV stations, and talk about what he just went through, those 3 stages. And then it gives an opportunity for your district to know who you are as a board member, know what we're doing and what we're trying to do. I appreciate the fact that the media will be invited to the schools, but I think that we'd miss a great opportunity if we didn't start really marketing your visit in your district, maybe even 4 weeks in advance, so that we get a good, solid mindset in the public that we're coming to town, and this is a new way and this is what we're thinking about. So that's just a suggestion maybe to incorporate in this plan.
Thank you for that. Mr. Birkin?
As well as organizations like in Lake Charles, Southwest Business Alliance, in Lafayette, what would, Cade, you spoke at the 100, what was it, Business 100?
One Acadiana?
One Acadiana, those types of organizations that promote the business, have the businesses within their organization. You know, I'm supposed to be speaking in Lake Charles to the Southwest Business Alliance about apprenticeships and internships later this month. They're interested.
Yeah, Mr. Walker, can you help us a little bit with the process here, with our efforts to make sure we don't leave anybody out? And, you know, along with Mr. Harris's thought and whatnot, getting ahead of this, to make sure that obviously the organizations, the people are going to be different in different regions throughout the state, and we want to make sure everyone's had an opportunity to engage. Can you speak to that a little bit?
And so in planning this, we have met with all of the, well, obviously we've met with Louisiana Business and Industry, and they have connected us with the important players in each region. Actually, we have a call at 12 o'clock with the leadership of the state chambers of commerce, right? And all of those groups that you mentioned, to ensure that, you know, this is not just a standalone operation, that it's tagged along with what they currently have going on, perhaps a meeting already, a forum or a gathering, and that we can implement ourselves into it, as not to add another meeting to someone's calendar, that we can be a part of their program since they're gathering. So we've cast a broad net. We've been, Lobby has introduced us and put us in spaces with C100, One Acadiana. We've worked extensively with LWC and about with the work that they're doing with their credentialing and their work-based programs and the industry-based credentials and things of that nature. And so we've cast a wide net to ensure that we have as many diverse players to the table as possible, both on the state level and in each of the regional areas.
Mr. Harris?
Just a question as we go forward, as you go forward with this and we get the dates, I'm pretty sure you'll be sending us those folks in our districts who you'll be inviting.
Yes, sir.
Because a lot of times with us being in the district, we may know there's an organization that you know, wasn't on Lobby's radar or something else, or it might be a good idea to include them. So I would encourage our members to peruse that list and really cultivate your district of those that need to, you know, attend this. And so we're going to need that information as it goes forward,
Yes, sir.
well in advance, so that we can ask you to add them to the list.
And so we will work with the strategy team from LDOE, our external partners, and you guys before we issue any kind of formal listing to ensure that we have that wide net of folks. Absolutely.
Question.
Mr. Castillo?
Will we be provided a set of talking points?
A script,
And
yes.
one that will be probably a little bit organic, because I suspect that as we get questions and as we do the tours, those talking points may need to be updated, just for consistency across the state.
Yes, sir. There will be a script, if you will, that we put together a deck for the members. And obviously, we want the members to lead it, right? Because this is your district, but we will give you all the tools that's necessary for you to cultivate a proper conversation. The document will be organic because it will change over time, depending on the district and depending on the questions that come up.
I'd like to add to that one and give the superintendent an opportunity for some input as well. I was looking for a standard script from the department, helping us along those lines as well, Mr. Castillo. So I'd like to give the superintendent an opportunity to engage here. Kevin spoke to us about our objectives here, one of which is to help folks to appreciate the value of this initiative, and then the second is the how-to. So along the lines of promoting the value, I want to give the superintendent an opportunity to speak to that and what the department's thoughts are on engagement here along those lines with a script, a standard script for every site.
So I think Mr. Walker is right that we are doing our best to cultivate a number of different relationships around the state around this work, both school systems and school leaders in schools, but also business industry partners as well as workforce and economic development partners, both formal and informal. And so we have been working through that for some time, but we view one of our objectives in this process is building out some of those primary talking points, not to have a script for a board member to read because our Let Teachers Teach initiative says we're moving away from scripts. But we are going to have a set of talking points available for the board, and certainly our team will be available for the board beforehand if you want to discuss any of those topics. And I think like Mr. Moore said too, there will be nuance in each of your own districts in the way in which you want to present information and the information that you determine is most important to present and share. So in terms of content, we are working alongside the BESE office to make sure that we do have a good set of talking points available to the board.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's going to be great for everybody. I think they'll be very well attended. And so my question is each of us, we represent a large number of parishes. How are we going about choosing a facility to be centrally located in each district so that we don't have people that have to drive 40 or 50 miles and to accommodate? I mean, I think we could have hundreds of people. I sure hope so.
So that's why we really want to engage the regional economic development authorities, whoever they be, the regional chambers of commerce, to figure out where do they normally meet, right? What's their normally meeting spot or facility? So again, that we cause the least disruption as possible. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So that's a part of the conversation today at noon is where's these spots that the local, let's say Rotary meets, right? And that we can use that same spot so it will be centrally located and not some spot that we pick that we don't necessarily know the area.
That sounds really
Ideally, it's
good.
an already scheduled meeting, so it's not an additional meeting.
That's correct.
Got it.
I wouldn't be surprised if this is something, I think that after we do this, I mean, it's like anything, the more often you do it, the more efficient you get, the better you get. And I would like to attend some of y'all's meetings to kind of get a sense of it. I hope mine's not first so that I basically get an opportunity to get a mulligan.
Be careful what you ask for.
Right. Hopefully Mr. Harris does. Building on your idea, I really like what you were saying, though, about promoting this so that people are aware of it. Sometimes you do the coolest thing in the world, but nobody knows about it. But to get the word out, to issue press releases and to engage the media, I wish that we did more of this. And I'm glad, you know, here we are, not even fully into our first year on BESE, and I think that we're going to find something that's going to be effective and helpful for all of us in years to come. It wouldn't surprise me if this time next year we say, hey, let's do this again, you know, and we get better at it with each and every passing year. So thank you for your answers to your questions.
Yes, sir.
It would be another suggestion for BESE members. Once this is all set in place and we've got our list, I would suggest that you get with your senators and reps in your district and peruse that list together, and so that they can be reinforcing the meetings with their constituents that are on that list, and also get any suggestions from them of some of the folks that they may want to invite that we have not seen. So I think it's incredibly important we kind of enlist, for that matter, even your police juries, if you're close with them and some of those folks, because we need to do this from the root all the way up and really have a big, hopefully, turnout like you said, Paul. Thank you.
Great comments, great comments. Mr. Walker, can you help us a little bit with, I know there's a call scheduled for this afternoon, but could you help us a little bit with some expectation on the timeline?
So my expectation might be a little ambitious, but we want to try to kick off, and Kevin is looking at me with a stare, kick off the first one in November, early November. We want to try to do at least 2 in November. We're going to stay close to home, so Mr. Hollis, you might be up.
That's what I was afraid of.
And so, just kind of get our sea legs under us, right, to kind of make sure we work out the kinks, if you will, and, hopefully we won't get any mulligans, but, we'll take it like a champ. And then we'll work our way, up to North Louisiana in the spring. So we want to perhaps get at least 2 done in November. We're kind of trying to figure out if December is an option, the first 2 weeks before everybody kind of get away for the holidays. But in earnest, we'll go up I-49, to the folks in northern Louisiana in the spring. But we want to probably cover down Baton Rouge, North Shore, and New Orleans first. in the
I'm
bayou,
okay with
sorry.
being the guinea pig in this process. And let me ask you, have you given some thoughts to the format? One of the things that I've seen, and I find it most effective, instead of having speaker after speaker after speaker, sometimes I see like a conversational approach, 6 or 7 people just, at a chair or what have you, and then maybe a person walking around in the audience, so to speak, with a microphone so that everybody's engaged. Is that kind of consistent?
That's the forum,
Okay.
yeah, that is the process. That's the forum process.
That sounds
we will
great.
use. Yep.
Well, very good, some good commentary here. One other thing I wanted to share with the board for consideration is there's been some conversation about potentially adding 1 or 2 additional items to the agenda. We could obviously limit this to the internship initiative, or there may be some interest for 1 or 2 other items. I wouldn't suggest that we spend too much time on the other items so that we take any focus off from the internship concept, but I did want to give members an opportunity for some discussion if there was any interest in adding any additional items to the agenda or not. Also wanted to give the superintendent an opportunity to comment on that.
And if I could add one thing, I don't want to forget about my friends who are appointed, the members. 3 appointed members, we will integrate you into the districts that you would like. So we haven't forgotten about you, but we wanted to leave that up to the individual appointed members, what area that they wanted to be incorporated in. But we definitely thought about you guys in the process.
I think, Mr. Morris, my thought would be to keep this focused on work-based learning as much as possible. There's a ton of energy around work-based learning, not just from BESE or our agency, but from various groups throughout the state, legislature, the governor's team. So I would keep it focused there as much as possible. Organically, there will be questions in Mr. Hollis's forum that will be not about work-based learning. And so I think that will just happen naturally. A parent or a business leader will say, well, what about X, Y, and Z? And so I think that will just typically happen naturally. But my encouragement would be to keep this pretty focused.
All right, appreciate that feedback. So we're aligned going forward here. That's great. So, Mr. Walker, when would we expect to hear from you again about next steps?
I would think in earnest, the week after the board meeting, we should have some dates locked in, with some proposed dates locked in after this week. So probably you will get some draft tentative stuff mid following week.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions, members? All right, do we have any public comment on this one? No public comment, no exceptions taken. Next item, please.
The next item on the agenda is consideration discussion regarding LDOE BESE strategic plan.
Can I get a motion? Mr. Castile, Ms. Mellerin, Mr. Walker?
So this item is a joint item between the department and BESE, and so in your materials, you should have gotten both BESE's strategic plan and the department's strategic plan. And upon review of these 2 documents, you will see that BESE pretty much has 4 strategies that's listed on page 2 in the document. The document was put together in July 22, and it runs through fiscal year 27-28. And those 4 strategy areas that feeds into the department's strategic plan, and they, in their strategic plan, it lays out its implementation efforts and the programs in which it will utilize, priorities in which it will utilize to fully implement those 4 strategies. And strategy A is ensuring that all students at every grade level are on track to graduate with a college and or career credential. That's all the conversation that we've had that the BESE tour was centered around. Build and strengthen state policy and practices to support students in an effort to identify gaps and advance opportunities for Louisiana students. Strategy C is maintain a system of high quality and accountability educational options for students and families. That's all of our work that we're doing around school choice, parent choice, course choice. And strategy D, use limited resources in the most strategic and equitable way possible to increase and support student achievement. So I see Mr. Beasley at the table. Okay, he's going to run the PowerPoint, and Dr. Brumley is going to present.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you all. So what I want to share with everyone today is just a look at the educational priorities that we're using as an agency. We had the ability to visit with you all as a board whenever you first came into office. We had some discussions around some of the most important areas for consideration, for movement over a period of 4 years. And we took some time as a team, worked with a number of partners to try to develop something really simple that could drive our work. We have identified a set of priorities, and as I typically share publicly, for us as an agency, these are the areas where we are investing our time, our energy, our conversations, our budget, the organization of our staff, because we believe that these are the most important areas for us to focus on as an agency. And they're pretty clean, too. They allow us to tell a story throughout the state that is very understandable about what we're trying to accomplish in the education space as an agency. And so with a little help, Ted, we're going to work through these priorities. And so this is just a list of priorities that we have set forth. Basically, it begins with early childhood education that's leading to kindergarten readiness. Next is literacy instruction aligned to the science of reading. We then have a foundational math priority. Then a very important priority around meaningful high school experiences, an effective teacher for every student, and expanding educational choice for students and families. And so we believe that a focus on these 6 areas or will help us move our work in the right direction. Now, naturally, there are so many other things that a school does or a school system might do that aren't captured in these particular priorities. But for us as a state agency, for us to be able to narrow our work so that we can move it in a significant way, we had to have focus, and that's why we set these particular priorities, which I think very much align to the issues and items that you as BESE members shared with us over a period of time when you first stepped into your term that you felt too are most important. So what we'll do is we'll take some time and we'll just walk through these priorities one by one. You'll see a priority. You'll also see a set of key endeavors for which we are embarking to make sure that a priority isn't just a hope and a prayer, but that it is very thoughtful in the actual actions that we're going to take to move forward and hitting the marks that we're setting forth. So the first being early childhood experiences leading to kindergarten readiness. And under this particular area, we have set, Mr. Harris, a key performance indicator of growing the percentage of early childhood sites rated highly proficient or excellent by 5 percentage points. So while our school systems and schools get letter grades and school performance scores, likewise, our early care centers also get a performance profile. What we've seen over the last few years is because of a ton of collaboration and I think smart work on the part of early childhood centers is that our scoring has moved in the right direction. But I would share with you that we are thinking through making sure that we are looking at the right factors to be able to determine if a center is a high-quality center. But as we do that, we want to continue to move more of the centers towards that top level of scoring, towards that top level of performance. And so the KPI for this particular priority is growing the percentage of those early childhood sites, those centers across the state of Louisiana, so that more of them are rated as highly proficient or excellent. And so these key endeavors are endeavors for which we will be undertaking over the next few years or are presently working on. And so I've asked Ms. Malin Baker, who is the Assistant Superintendent of Early Childhood Education, to share these particular endeavors with you and entertain any questions you may have. I would point out that we do have an item later in the agenda that is specifically related to early childhood education. So if your question is one that gets really in the weeds, you may want to consider holding that for later in the meeting agenda when we cover that particular item. Ms. Baker.
Thank you. Yes, this is a wonderful opportunity for us to share out our key endeavors, but acknowledging that several of these items will be folded also into the presentation later in today's retreat agenda. But to begin, the first key endeavor, really, as we think about increasing those options to high quality, is specific to language development. And so at the department, we're really focusing our efforts on increasing language development for children ages 0 to 4 years old, and doing so through targeted regional and statewide professional development opportunities. The second is, second and
Ms.
third.
Ms.
Yes.
Baker, may I interrupt there? You may want to talk specifically about the way in which you spent your weekend, because I
Yes.
think it's related to this particular topic.
Yes, actually, and I had the opportunity. We had nearly 700 of our early childhood educators and professionals at a conference this weekend. I had the wonderful opportunity to sit in on a session specifically to language development and modeling in this space. And so definitely lots of excitement in terms of all of these priorities were embedded in our conference opportunity. And we also were last month in North Louisiana in Shreveport. We had a similar model for our North Louisiana educators where we had over 400. And so yes, I am taking away so many great nuggets as a mother who got to sit in on several sessions, but also as a professional supporting our educators in this space. And so yes, that was really a great kickoff, and thank you for that segue, because we were able to share with them a lot of our work underway in the language development and language modeling space. And so with that, as we think about supporting early childhood professionals, you'll see on that second and third goal, we have key endeavors specifically as it relates to keeping our great educators and teachers in our early childhood classrooms. And so really some specific efforts into ensuring that we are promoting retention of those great teachers. Our next few goals is as it relates to the fourth and fifth. The fourth is really a goal for ourselves as an agency in terms of streamlining our processes that allow our centers and sites to operate as efficiently as possible. And so we're really looking at what are the systems that we can employ to support our centers and sites to be as efficient and as effective as possible. And then our fifth is really around data. You saw in our goal, our key endeavor, or key KPI is specific around data and how do we increase the sites that are high proficient and excellent. And so we're going to continue to zoom in on utilizing data to support those lower performing sites in order to help them and target in ways specifically to increase the quality of our early childhood sites. And so going quickly, acknowledging we'll be going in more detail later in today's agenda. The next 5, just pulling out some highlights as it relates to expanding developmental screeners. We have the opportunity at our sites to engage with our youngest learners in Louisiana. And so the opportunity for us to expand those developmental screenings and ensure families and those children receive the supports that they need. The 7th is really kind of zooming in on those workforce needs. How can we partner and explore with other state agencies those successful models and strategies for child care access? And then when it comes to our work, really being strategic and partnering with local community organizations and best meeting the needs of the region is something that has been underway, and we're further working to be strategic in those efforts in order to meet the needs of the community. And then our ninth goal is really around our engagement of families, ensuring that we're working to inform and develop those resources specifically as it relates to supporting young children's development. I'll talk a little bit about it more in the next agenda item, but acknowledging that early childhood experiences vary from those that are at our sites to those that have at-home learning. All of those efforts are things that we put thought in our office on ways to support and expand. And to that point, our last key endeavor is really specifically around expanding pathways to family child care program certifications. And so more to come in terms of the updates we'll provide as we track our progress towards these key endeavors, as well as the presentation later in your retreat today. Welcome any questions.
So you may have a question around if your goal is to move to 5% more being highly proficient or excellent, what's that number now? And what does a trend line look like? And so just to share with you, in the 18-19 year, about 44% of early care centers were in this particular rating of highly proficient or excellent. And we've been able to move that up. And so now we're at 64% with some of our more recent data that are rated highly proficient or excellent. And so the next is, can we get that additional 5 points moving forward? Balancing that against the fact that we know we have more work to do, and I believe Ms. Baker spoke specifically about language development, because now with the universal screener for kindergartners, we have a new data point that we can look at when our youngest learners, or when youngest learners come into the school system. And so we want to make sure that experiences are robust in the early care centers to prepare students in a developmentally appropriate way to be successful and kindergarten ready on day one.
Ms. Baker, I understand I'm sorry. Ms. Holloway?
I didn't want her to leave because I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Holloway.
I'm sorry, thank you. Ms. Baker, Mayla, you're doing an amazing job. Dr. Bromley, I mean, she's on it. And the expansion of our early childhood, but would this be the time to talk about Ready Start Network that is, or do we want to wait? Because I really think this is such an amazing initiative. Dr. Bromley?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really important. And I think the Ready Start networks are key to so much of the early childhood work. I think what I would offer is we have an entire agenda item just for this. We might want to hold it for that particular item.
Perfect, because I wanted to add information to that. Thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Birkin?
One thing about the early childhood and with regards to this funding, it seems like it takes so much money per child on this. And I guess why, for one, and two, seemed like if it obviously didn't cost so much, we could reach more and move that number up. But I mean, am I right in remembering it's somewhere like $13,000 a child or higher?
I would say for our infants, as we think about, we do have lower ratio. As we think about serving and supporting our infants, we have a much lower teacher to child ratio. And so that's really designed and targeted to best support that low ratio to ensure, infants cannot articulate the way that your older children can in terms of their needs. And so because of that low ratio, that is one of the contributing factors to ensure that we have purposefully targeted low child to teacher ratios.
And Mr. Birkin, we do have in the early childhood presentation, we have a slide that will show by age the percent of learners served by age. So I think, again, we'll explore this a little more in a later item.
Ms. Baker, I understand how you're going to calculate your key metric with the 5% goal, but I'm curious how much thought you've given to your key endeavors, which basically you have to successfully implement your key endeavors to achieve your 5%. So have you guys given any thought to how you would measure implementation of your key endeavors?
Yes, I'd say that is definitely behind the scenes working to ensure we have a metric to go to each. I think we have potentially lined up I think in the next 2 or so months to kind of go further into how we think that the metrics of each key endeavor will further contribute to the key performance indicator.
Thank you for that. Definitely appreciate better understanding of what's working, what's not working, how well some things are working. You know, do we need to make a pivot at some point, change our strategy based on the feedback from those measurements? And I think also, probably leading into Senator Appel's presentation here shortly, but you know, I think it's really important at this stage how we compile all this information so that when we do go to the legislature with budget requests for this item, that we've got a solid database to support the request. So really interested to hear where you guys land on how you're going to measure your key endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Okay, our next priority area is literacy instruction aligned to the science of reading. And for this particular item, we have a set of KPIs that we're pleased to share with you all that are specific to literacy. Those 3 KPIs, the first is specific to our Louisiana statewide assessment, which is our LEAP. Growing the percentage of students proficient and above on LEAP grades 3 ELA by 5 percentage points. I think that what's important about calling this particular grade level out is the fact that over the last few years, we've put so many policies and practices in place that are related to K-3 to ensure that more students are exiting 3rd grade capable of accessing that 4th grade content without the need for additional supports. And so a lot of good work has taken place here. Next is beyond our statewide assessment, but it's looking, on the next is for 8th grade in the same way that we've looked at 3rd grade. And then finally, I was going to share beyond just the statewide assessments, we're also looking a little more globally and looking at NAEP scores. If we hit those numbers, and we did go back and look at historical trends on all these numbers, but if we hit those 2 numbers on LEAP, we will have achieved the state's highest achievement levels in our state's history on LEAP in terms of proficiency. So we're trying to certainly push towards that level of achievement for students. And whenever we look at key endeavors, you'll see a list of actions that Dr. Chasson and her team are working through. And we just had our team check in just last week with literacy, as well as a numeracy check in with her team. And a lot of exciting and good work is happening here to build additional focus on these areas, but provide teachers and systems the supports that they need to be successful and families. So, Dr. Chesson.
Good morning. And we went into more depth on these literacy key endeavors just at the August board meeting, but I'm happy to provide some updates today as we do have some new developments. But we do have just some of our most important work highlighted here. We talked, just at our last meeting about the science of reading training that is required for kindergarten through 3rd grade teachers and leaders based on that 2021 legislation. We are launching this month our own Louisiana version of that training, which I think is going to be a great way for folks who still are in need of the training over the years to come to access that training that is going to be free of charge for our Louisiana educators. And so that is our science of reading update. We also had some questions at the August meeting about the reporting and how school systems report that completion data to us. And so we are gathering some updates that we hope to bring to you all soon about that reporting data to give you some updated numbers from school systems on their completion rates. So we hope to bring you all that soon as well. We've been working on that since the August meeting. Another really important piece here that Dr. Brumley mentioned is our statewide literacy screener. And we are concluding that administration for the beginning of the year for this school year. And we hope in the next few weeks to have that data compiled and some statewide data ready to share with you all about our beginning of the year administration.
And my team has been hard at work in really working with our educators across the state in how to utilize the reports. The M-Class system that we utilize has some fantastic reports for teachers, for families, for school leaders and system leaders. And so we've really been digging into those reports and sharing with educators how to use the reports to then inform some upcoming actions. How do they use those reports to intervene with students in those needed areas? So that has been the work of the screener so far this school year.
Dr. Shess, I want to interrupt right here because I think this is, from an educational standpoint, this is really important. I'm really excited because it's really truly the first time in our state's history when we have known for kindergarten through second graders, certainly, but through third grade as well, on a developmentally appropriate level where they are multiple times a year. And that's because we have the screener in place now. But what's even the next step, and I think where it becomes really instructive, is what she just shared out. Because every child, for every child, the teacher will get a report that essentially shows areas of strengths and areas of concern. It helps identifies ways in which the child can be grouped and some of the next step measures. And so this is such a higher level of opportunity that we have available today in these elementary classrooms. And I just want to commend the board because you all have been a part of that, whether legislatively or at the board, of working through a set of policies to make that possible and get us here where we are today.
I have a question on that one. So whenever we get the data back, first question is, the next time you guys share with us some of the outcomes, that'll be the results from the baseline screening in the fall, or that'll be the results from the mid-year updates?
We'll have beginning of the year data in a few weeks from now. That is completing that administration. So we'll have those reports cleaned up in a few weeks. But we will be able to compare beginning of the year this year to beginning of the year last year, which I think is going to be very important.
Okay, great. So second question is, once you get those results, we'll be able to see which areas of the state have been more successful than the others and some less so. Will you guys have enough definition in your data to help us to appreciate why? What's working, what's not working? How can we recognize what is working? And how can we appreciate the support that's necessary to help areas where it's not working? Are you guys going to be able to help us appreciate any of that level of detail with the data that you have?
Absolutely. This is some of the KPI and then collecting metrics on the key endeavors work that we've talked about, Mr. Morris, that I think is really important. We actually already have some of that because we have even though last year was our first year of administering the screener throughout the year, we were able to determine which school systems had students showing the most growth between middle of the year and end of year. And so we've already identified school systems who did amazing things throughout the year. We've been able to visit, our literacy team is very much field-based. They are out in schools and school systems every day of the week almost. And so they are already, we've collected a lot of that data to see where are they on their Act 108 Science of Reading completion rate. How does that align with what we're seeing in the growth of students? What are we seeing in those classrooms? What programs are they using? What do their interventions look like? How are they using and leveraging the tutoring program? So we're already seeing some of those things just from last year's beginning of the year to end of year data. And so I think it'll be very interesting to compare beginning of the year last year to beginning of the year this year to see what students have really held, and do we see cohorts of students coming in even stronger, which is what we want to see over time.
Great. So we'll be able to appreciate the how, and we can acknowledge the success, and we can help to appreciate where we need to add support in other areas.
Yes.
And what kind of support.
Yes.
Thank you.
May I ask a question, Mr. Morris?
Yes, Ms. Holloway.
Jenna, I'm not sure if there's a possibility to have a certain type of a one-pager chart with Dibbles screener. You know how it shows the yellow, the green, the red? Still
The
does.
colors, yeah.
If there was a sampling for the board members to see how it's measured from the baseline and that Ames line up? Can you do that, like a kid that's proficient to a kid that's low performing?
Absolutely, we can share that. We have some sample reports we can
That
share
would be
from
good
different
for them to see
perspectives.
how teachers gauge
Mhm.
the instruction.
We
Perfect.
would also, Ms. Holloway, we would also love to, for any member that's interested, we would love to do, you know, an offline presentation of what this looks like, and then give you the opportunity also to see what type of reports the teacher is receiving, and then be able to see what they can do from
It'd
that
be
particular
incredible for
point.
them to see and how
So,
it's done. Yeah, that's,
Jenna, we may want to reach out just maybe in our next communication with the board and just offer that, because I think that it's, I think you'll be impressed at where we are right now and what we can do.
I think it's great. Great idea. Thank you.
One of the things we worked really hard on was ensuring that the family reporting was very digestible and usable for families who receive this report at the beginning of the year. If you receive a report with the colors, to your point, Ms. Holloway, and you see, you know, a lot of red for your child, I think it's really important for a parent to understand, you know, why am I seeing this? What is the school and my child's teacher going to do about this? And where do they need support? And then beyond that, what might I do at home to support my child? And so we worked really hard on the family reports that we can show you all samples of, to make sure that family members were able to understand and use the information.
Yeah, and it also coincides with the tutoring and how the tutoring filters into those results.
Yes.
Perfect.
So another piece, we've talked a little bit about the tutoring and the intervention and how the screener is a very big part of that. But our team is also really hard at work in strengthening core instruction. And so core instruction is just, what does that grade level block of time look like for English language arts instruction? And how are we ensuring that educators are really using the most of that time in implementing their high quality materials during the school day very well? It also means keeping that time very sacred and ensuring that all of our students, even our students with disabilities, have access to that core time, and that's not when any pull-out interventions are occurring. So all students are in class receiving that core grade level instruction. So that's another key piece of our work for the upcoming years as well. But a little bit more about tutoring, and I wanted to give an update here because we have some exciting developments since the August board meeting. We have launched the Accelerate, which is the school day embedded tutoring program this year that is based on legislation from this past session, but also had a $30 million appropriation. And so our school systems have been submitting their plans. Those were due on September 15th. And we have been reviewing, providing feedback, and then subsequently approving those plans so that school systems can receive their allocations. We are also launching on-site monitoring, and so we've been preparing our school systems for that as they kick off their tutoring. We're hearing and seeing some really wonderful things about this school day embedded tutoring that's taking place, either with an external tutoring provider or through utilizing school system staff as tutors. And so we're excited to visit more schools this year and complete that on-site monitoring, where we'll be able to provide feedback to strengthen implementation and also gather, I think, some really great data about tutoring and what's happening in our schools and through the Accelerate program. Another exciting update is around our Steve Carter education program, which this past session expanded the Steve Carter tutoring program from just K-5 literacy to now K-12 ELA and math. It also came with a $5 million state appropriation for this outside of the school day tutoring voucher program that families can use to get reading and math tutoring for their children. And we had an explosion of registrants. And so over the last several months, we've worked side by side with stakeholders, with our communications team, and everyone has really done a fantastic job in messaging about this program. And we had over 20,000 students have registered for the program at this point. And so last Monday, we triggered the wait list for the program. And so at this point, no currently enrolled students are impacted. They can continue their programming. But we do have a wait list because we do feel like we will exhaust all of the funding from the state appropriation this school year with the currently registered students.
And a point here is 20,000, you know, I mean, this program took us a couple of years to lift. And I think the legislative changes that we were able to make last session really helped with some of the ways in which the law was stifling the program. But 20,000 students registering is important. Obviously, we would like to not need a tutoring program in the afternoon because every child was proficient, but that's not where we are, and no state is likely to be there, and so they need to develop supports like this. But if every student utilized the total amount of their funding, I think, Jenna, it would serve between 3,000 and 4,000 students if every student utilized completely their funding. So that's what the $5 million would provide for. Now, we know that not every student who enters needs the entirety of the allocation, the entirety of the voucher, and we know that some families will register and then not necessarily ever participate. But just want to put in perspective that whenever you hear the 20,000 registrations, that's registrations. There's no way that we could provide a complete voucher for every student who's registered with the current level of an allocation.
And then finally, just wanted to mention that we are holding regional collaborations across the state at several points throughout this school year in 5 different regions across the state, where our team is going out to bring together school and system leaders to lead collaborations around all of these important key endeavors. We're also provided differentiated support, like I touched on a moment ago, using our data to really drive our system support, providing that on-site support, and then leading cohorts with groups of like districts around the state as we analyze their data. And so really that outreach, I think, is a key part of our work this year and in the next several years.
We've obviously shown some really impressive outcomes, particularly in areas of growth with literacy, and we want to be able to sustain that and continue to grow. But in order to do that, obviously, we're going to need funding. Can you guys help us out with what that looks like going forward? What kind of funding do we need to be able to sustain this type of support, and how can we help out?
I'll take that. I think, Mr. Morris, there's action around a legislative committee that you guys are establishing, which I think is important and frankly will be really helpful. Our tutoring efforts are presently funded with 2 separate allocations from state general funds. One is the $30 million that we're utilizing for the Accelerate model. This relates to the legislation that passed, which I think is really holds promise to do some amazing things. But every K-5 student not proficient has to undergo a certain dosage of tutoring each week. And so this is what Jenna has been talking about, because I've shared with her team, I want to make sure that we hold a high bar for school systems of what we're accepting and approving for tutoring plans, because we've got to get this right from the beginning. Let's work with systems. Let's make sure that their tutoring plans are of a high level. So we're working through a process on that, and that's funded through $30 million that is being allocated out proportionately to school systems. So once we approve a plan, then they're eligible for their allocation. So that's the first $30 million. The other $5 million is the Steve Carter money that we also were able to secure. And I have to tell you, I am frankly a little nervous about the continuation of that funding source, just because of all the talks that we hear around certain cuts in the state budget. And so I do think as that legislative committee begins to think about your body of work, that our tutoring efforts certainly need to be a priority as we have conversations with legislators moving forward.
Thank you for that. And then just one final question. I've seen some really, I think, in-depth thought and work put into how we're going to be able to support requests for additional funding based on the outcomes and the metrics that you guys have put together for the Accelerate program. But I want to ask the same question about the Steve Carter program and the tutoring. Do we have appropriate monitoring in place so that we can measure those outcomes and justify another budget request for the tutoring?
Yes, tutoring providers are required in the program to keep certain data points so that we can track student progress over time. We're also able to tie, because it's based on that Louisiana student ID number, where we are able to tie student outcomes to their tutoring. And the wait list has also been employed so that it is time-stamped. So we, in the future would be able to open back up the wait list on a first-come, first-served basis. And I think that wait list will be a really important part of conversation as we head into the spring and have more conversations about funding. We'll know the amount of students on that wait list. I know as of today, we had over 1,000, and we just turned on the wait list last Monday.
Thank you for that. Members, any other comments? Superintendent? All right, Mr. Walker?
Moving on to the next priority is foundational math. And so whenever we look at KPIs for foundational math, we see they're very similar to the literacy priorities, with the exception of the goals that are a bit more ambitious. As you know, our math proficiency rates are lower than our ELA proficiency rates, and so we know that we have to really jump these if we're going to get them in a similar position as our literacy rates. I would call out that if we achieve these jumps, it would again put us in a position where we would have the state's historically highest proficiency rates in 3rd and 8th grade math. And then moving beyond the state numbers, we also included a NAEP number where we want to see an increase in scale score by 10 points. And so Jen and her team have a set of endeavors that they're pursuing on math. And I always use this opportunity whenever I'm talking about math to just share that across the country and in Louisiana, from 4th through 8th grade, math proficiency goes down. So the percent of students proficient in math in 4th grade is higher than the percent of students proficient in math in 8th grade, not just here, but everywhere. I'm not a certified math teacher, but I think as a team, we've come to believe there are two main reasons for that. One is earlier in the presentation, we talked about early childhood education, but right out of early childhood comes grades, or is considered to be part of, K1 and 2. And so we have to do a better job, I think, of not just having fluent readers in those early grades, but having fluent mathematicians in those earlier grades. And so we have to give more time on task for math opportunities. And then the other piece is the training piece. There are oftentimes I talk to individuals who teach in intermediate or middle grades math, and that's not a job they ever thought they wanted or would be in, but they are doing that job for whatever various reason. And so we have to make sure that we're doing our work to have a bench of math teachers, but also that we're training and resourcing those that are out there in the field doing the work. So Jenna, you want to talk through some of the key endeavors?
Sure, and tomorrow we actually have our KPI update on math. So I'll briefly just touch on a few things right now, but we'll go into more depth about all of these during tomorrow's math updates. But like Dr. Brumley said, we really have a parallel strategy that we've created for math in alignment with our literacy strategy, as we've really learned and researched and seen what has worked over the last several years for literacy, now paralleling that in mathematics. We do have our required training for 4th through 8th grade math teachers, Act 260 of the 2023 legislative session, and that is underway this school year. And I'll have more data to share on that tomorrow, but this training really emphasizes the importance of foundational math, to Dr. Brumley's point, but it also really emphasizes the balance between fluency and conceptual understanding. So really having teachers dig in and understand more about the importance of fluency in the classroom. It also touches on something called math dispositions, and that's just because there's been a ton of research about students' belief in if they can do math or not. And, you know, many times we see students who intrinsically do not believe they can do math and that math is hard, and that becomes a barrier for students being successful in math. And so math dispositions is also a part of that. So we've gotten some really good feedback about the content of this required training, and we have a lot of our 4th through 8th grade math teachers currently enrolled and engaged in that training statewide. We are also planning and developing a statewide math screener based on this past session and the desire for us to have a math screener at those earliest grade levels. And just like literacy, we are providing an expansion of the tutoring programs, also includes math, both Accelerate and Steve Carter includes mathematics. And we are provided differentiated support, on-site support, and those regional collaborations for math as well as literacy. And so our math team, which has more recently expanded, we have a few people on our math team, and so they also, like the literacy team, are out doing a lot of on-site visits, a lot of training with educators and school and system leaders.
Okay, looking at any questions, any, not math questions, but any questions about math for Dr. Chesson?
With more to come tomorrow on math.
Okay, moving on. Meaningful high school experiences. So let's look at that KPI. How will we measure success? The first is increase the percentage of graduates that are college, career, or service ready as measured by the Acceleration Index by 15 points. When we talked about the revised accountability system, the simulations that have been used are if schools don't do anything differently at all. It's based on the way in which schools operate today. So if you remember, the Acceleration Index are the students who are hitting a certain score on a nationally recognized exam and then either earning college credit through AP or IB or dual enrollment, or getting an ACT subscore high enough to earn college credit, or it's on the career piece, students who are achieving one of the basic bundles or an advanced credential or a fast-forward apprenticeship or an LCTCS Certificate of Technical Studies, or getting that military sign-on. And so what we want is in that particular acceleration index of the revised accountability formula is we want to see an increase of 15% within the next essentially 3 or so years. And I think that we can see that, and I think it's reasonable to believe that we can hit that if we continue to have opportunities like the BESE Connections Tour, that you're going out to talk about work-based learning in the communities, and once high schools focus on some of this really meaningful work. And then the other piece is just the increasing the percentage of high school students demonstrating college and career readiness on the national assessments by 5 percentage points. And so that's looking beyond LEAP, but it's looking at some of those national measures that we've included on that in that revised accountability formula. And Dr. Singleton is going to give us a brief update on ways in which we're thinking about moving this work forward.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. So as Dr. Bromley stated, our team is focused on providing additional opportunities for students to engage in dual enrollment. We continue to provide support to our school counselors with regards to dual enrollment opportunities, making sure that they are aware of the dual enrollment portal, working with the Board of Regents on providing those opportunities. We also hold the Counselor Institutes, which those will be taking place later this month, actually the week of October 21st, where we are providing additional information on the accountability system so that they can understand what needs to be undertaken at their particular campuses and how they can support their building principals as well as the students and parents so that they understand the revised accountability system and what supports need to be in place. Our team is also focused on providing circumstances for students to participate in internships and apprenticeships to provide them with that opportunity to gain knowledge and experience in high school as to how they want to continue their lives after high school. So this will give them, those who desire to enter the career field immediately after high school, a jump start on their chosen career path. We are also collaborating with the Louisiana Workforce Commission, local chambers of commerce, and school systems on creating those connections. We have monthly meetings with those particular stakeholders so that we are all on the same page in providing those opportunities. We have also published work-based learning guidance for our school systems. We have that already on our website. We're also in the process of developing additional work-based learning guidance on how to develop quality programs. We have that's going to be a comprehensive manual. We are continue to collaborate with the Louisiana Community and Technical College System on the availability of certificates of technical studies. We, of course, again, making sure we have resources for our professional school counselors, and we are meeting with our military counterparts on a regular basis as well so that we can provide opportunities for those who want to go into the military or to take the ASVAB and to learn those various indexes and degrees, various job opportunities that are available in the military. And finally, we are working with our diverse learners team in making sure that we are meeting the needs of our English learners. There's a new person here on staff, and we have been meeting with her so that we can develop some guidance and support for those individuals so that they can be successful in whatever pathway they choose to pursue.
Okay, any questions, Mr. Morris, about high school experiences?
Yeah, I had one. Can you go back to slide 19? Let's see if this is the right one. Yeah, grow the number of certified dual enrollment educators by providing support to school systems on identifying potential candidates for the Board of Regents dual enrollment certification pilot. I'm not sure I'm familiar with that. Can you help me out with the certification pilot?
So the Board of Regents has developed a process where they're going to certify educators to be dual enrollment instructors. And so they have this at a couple of their campuses, and so we are awaiting information from the Board of Regents on exactly where this is and how this will be implemented. Okay. So we can provide you, I can reach out to the Board of Regents to get more information as to where they are. I regularly ask them about that, and I've not received an update recently.
Okay. Any chance we could get an update at the December joint meeting?
Sure.
I asked Commissioner Reed for an update on standardizing the fee bill for dual enrollment, so I know that's coming. We can make that request as well. It seems like that's a good fit.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Morris, when you say standardizing the fee bill, what do you mean exactly?
Well, the discussions that I've had with, I don't know, a handful of college presidents, they share with me an interest in standardizing the fee bill because across the state, we find that there's different negotiations going on regionally, and that creates challenges for budget planning, and then for school districts as well for budget planning. So a year ago at the joint BESE Board of Regents meeting, Board of Regents advised us that there was some work that had started along these lines, and then we were looking for an update at the next joint meeting. There didn't seem to be much progress, so I asked Commissioner Reed if she could give us an update in December, and they plan on doing so. So I know a lot of budgetary meetings are obviously in the works at the legislature, but I know this is a high priority for us, and the more clarity we can get on it in alignment, I think, with Board of Regents is to our advantage and to our students' advantage.
Thank you, Dr. Singleton. Moving on to the next priority has to do with quality teachers for every student, critically important. And so how will we measure success? We really thought about this KPI and thought about going ahead and trying to publish something now, but it really doesn't make sense to do that, and let me share a little bit about why. So this is our first year that we are utilizing statewide our more robust teacher evaluation model, the LEADS model. We've had, I think it's fair to say, Jenna, over 100 training sessions over the course of the year to prepare evaluators so that they're high-quality evaluators for this process. And so this also has to do with the process where highly effective teachers are seeing a reduction in evaluations, where they're getting more autonomy if their evaluations are showing that they are being successful in the classroom, which is a way in which we're honoring the profession. And it also allows principals and assistant principals to spend more time on teachers that are maybe novice or struggling. But the key performance indicator is increase the percentage of students in a classroom led by a high-quality teacher. Now, the easy thing for us to do would have, from a data standpoint, would be to say increase the number of teachers rated as highly effective. But we wanted to take that to the student level. And so we turned that particular KPI into, essentially increasing the number of students being served by a high-quality teacher. And so we can't get that baseline data until next fall, because 24-25 this year is the first year where the new evaluation system for teachers is in effect. So once we go through this year, we'll get the baseline, and then we'll have a shortened amount of time to hit the mark. But I just think it's important to set the mark on a number that we'll be using for a longer period of time. And so, Ted, if we look at quality teachers and some of those key endeavors, Dr. Chassain's back to share some of this work.
Thanks, Dr. Brumley. And some of our first key endeavors are, of course, based on the implementation of the learning year, which is this year, of our new evaluation system, LEADS. And we have reached over 100 in-person trainings across the state since May, which I think is very important because this is indeed very in-person work. And we know that outside of the family, educators in classrooms have the most significant impact on students. And so we see this LEADS system and these new tools that are available within it as a really important way for us to define a common language and understanding for what high-quality instruction looks like. And so I think the implementation of LEADS is going to be a really important part of how we increase educator effectiveness over the next several years. Some other key endeavors that we are working on include the expansion of our pre-educator pathway in high schools. So these are the courses in high schools across the state where high school students can begin learning how to become teachers. So it's a way to engage our high school students in getting excited about becoming educators themselves. We also have our new teacher, professional development and supports. Our data on workforce that's presented to you all every spring shows that we are still losing a disproportionate amount of our first-year educators, and so we've continued to increase and enhance our support for new teachers.
Dr. Chassain, that is obviously an important point to discuss, but also I think it's also worth noting that our new teacher experience work that we're doing around new teachers seems to also be working, because I believe that we had an increase in 5% on new teachers retention, which is a really significant increase. We saw a +5 on our retention numbers for new teachers, and I think a lot of that has to do with the work that we're doing statewide around the new teacher experience.
That's absolutely right, Dr. Brumley. So that tells us that that is a right place to push and a right place to continue to increase our supports for new teachers and that new teacher experience project. We also have and will continue to look at new policy pathways and now implementing some of those new policy pathways both to our teacher workforce but also to that leader pipeline, and making sure we have a clear and effective way to name high-quality leaders at the school level. We've also been working to increase the amount and the quality of mentor teachers who serve in mentoring our student residents in the educator preparation programs, but also these mentors also serve our new teachers, so they're very important. We've also continued and will continue to support and train on teacher collaboration as really the key structure, which is a job-embedded sacred time and space for teachers to come together and collaborate and continue to learn about their craft and enhancing what happens in classrooms. And then finally, but no less important, implementing and then supporting our school systems in implementing those recommendations from the Let Teachers Teach Task Force, which I know we've continued to update you all about, which is incredibly important work.
Ted, I'm going to do something a bit abnormal here, but you were in our teacher advisory council meeting the other day, where we were walking through the Let Teachers Teach 18 recommendations and the status check on all those, and we had about 15 teachers there that we were walking through that with. Ted, you want to just give us a general, like, from your impression, how you felt like the teachers in the room were receiving that work?
Sure. Yeah, it was a conversation about the Let Teachers Teach recommendations at the Teacher Advisory Council last week. They were really well received. I think the comment that stuck out the most to me, I cannot remember where the teacher was from, but she said she has never felt this supported before from the state level as far as removing distractions from the classroom. Also, really good conversation around the removing cell phones from the classroom and the positive impact that's had on students. I know I follow a lot of school system social media, and Ascension Parish Schools has been sharing, or maybe this was just their PIO talked about sharing, but about kids talking to each other, not texting anymore, and paying attention more in class. There was even one teacher who shared that she's having to get better at what she does because the kids are paying more attention. So it was very well received. I wish I had recorded it. As they were saying that, I was like, this would be great to have this on video. So.
How do we sustain that? How do we monitor that Let Teachers Teach is actually being implemented and it's being sustained?
I think a feedback loop is the teachers. I know of, I'm not going to go in which particular recommendation, but I know of one recommendation that went into law even, that teachers in the field are saying, in many instances, this one is not being followed. This is not happening. And so I think just maintaining that feedback loop with teachers will give us a sense of where they are in the implementation, or where systems are in terms of implementation. And I think because there is so much frustration around one of those not being followed the way in which teachers believe it should be followed, I think it's going to lead to an additional instrument this upcoming session.
And what's the formal process for getting the teacher feedback?
I don't guess I understand the question, but we just last week had our Superintendent's Teacher Advisory Council where we pulled them together to go over policies that we're considering bringing to the board, and we also received feedback on things that have been implemented and the ways in which they've been implemented.
Okay, so maybe the Teacher Advisory Council meeting is the feedback mechanism? Is that?
For me as state superintendent, there are a number of data points that we can look at to see if policies are working. We can look at retention numbers. We can look at teacher evaluations. We can look at a number of different things, but anecdotally, other than being out in the field and having conversations with teachers, which I do frequently, this particular Superintendent's Teacher Advisory Council is the way in which we receive formal feedback, and these are public meetings on policies that we intend to implement and or get feedback on the way in which things are working. And these teachers are from throughout the state. Like we had 15, I think, in attendance at our last meeting, and as Ted mentioned, we talked about the cell phone prohibition, and it was very popular with the entire group, and it was shared that it was working. I think there was only one school system represented, and certainly not going to call the name, that felt like the implementation hasn't gone the way in which they would have hoped it had gone, but they pointed to communication issues within their own system. But I would say overwhelmingly the teachers were thinking it had gone really well. Okay, moving on to our final priority area, which is educational choice for students and families. This too is a area where we had to think a lot about what KPI makes the most sense. We didn't want to say something like have X many more of this type of school or less of this type of school or anything like that, because I just don't think that's just calling out numbers for the sake of calling out numbers. But what we do believe is important is reducing the percentage of students attending failing schools by 5 percentage points. And we believe one way in which we can reduce the percentage of students in failing schools are through our school choice options. And whether that's things like our public charter work, whether that's in-district transfer within traditional public systems, ESAs, RSD, non-publics. There are a number of different ways that we can think about a portfolio for families that can help reduce the number of kids in failing schools. So Ms. Gilson is going to make a presentation on key endeavors here.
Thank you, Dr. Brumley. So for the Office of School Choice, of course, we will work to increase the number of educational scholarship account participants. As you know, we have the Louisiana Scholarship Program, which will end this year, and we will move into the Louisiana Gator Program. We have about 5,700 students currently in that program. We were able to have a phase 2 and have an additional 265 more students to participate in that scholarship program. The next thing is we'll make sure that the process, I mentioned that we are moving toward the Gator program. We want to make sure that this transition and this process is seamless for parents. There's been a lot of work done as we prepare for the Gator program to make sure that we formulate procedures that ensure this smooth transition. We've engaged our current LSP schools, and we've also talked to some of our schools who are interested in participating. Dr. Armstrong was actually on that call, and we have many of our schools who are interested, who are not LSP schools, but are interested in becoming one of the providers in our Gator program. Also, we'll continue to provide tools and resources for our local authorizers, our local charter authorizers, to support them in becoming high-quality authorizers. Actually, on Thursday, we have an in-person session called Excellence in Authorizing, where we have 25 people who are scheduled to come here to the Claiborne building, and they'll have 3 sessions to help them actually strengthen their authorizing process. We're also going to make sure that we support these locals with board governance and also organizational structures and how to allow the autonomy of the charter school to not be a barrier for them to expand their charter portfolio. Our RFA process will expand to increase the number of high-quality charters. So you guys have already done that. You approved a policy which allows us to have more. Dr. Brumley would like it to just stay ongoing and open forever and ever. But we actually have a cycle. You all have a mid-year cycle, and tomorrow you'll actually hear from 2 new charters who are asking for your permission and who have submitted a charter application. And then finally, we'll evaluate every single eligible RSD intervention school. So Dr. Schooler and her team are going out and evaluating to see which schools actually should be a part of the RSD and what sort of intervention that we can provide to them. Any questions from you all?
One question.
Senator Pell?
I've had a number of folks contact me lately about the ramifications of the new Gator program and the first phase, the vouchers. The question, I think, it boils down to if they have X number of kids, let's say 20 kids, that are currently getting vouchers, and those kids graduate on, can they backfill another 20 kids under the new ESA rules?
They can accept any eligible student, however many seats they wish to provide for Gator, they're able to do that. I think you're talking about the students, the LSP students, who their amount of funding, the amount that they're getting, they can receive that funding and it'll be there until their terminal grade.
Yeah, I understand that part. No,
And
this
then
is
any
more about
new
numbers of students. In other words, again, if you have a number of students and they finish the program,
they can accept even more than the 20 that they had before, if they're eligible.
assuming the funding's there, assuming the appropriation's there.
Assuming the funding's there and assuming that their students, obviously the students would be eligible and then they meet the priority, so yes.
Yeah, so what she's saying is they're only guaranteed the first batch. The first batch are guaranteed the money, but then anything new is subject to the availability of funds.
Appropriation. Correct.
Okay, that's why, I got to explain that to them, and I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Any more questions? Thank you.
And then finally, we do have a priority around attendance. Well, we are including information about attendance. It's really across office work. Hoping too, Mr. Morris, the legislative committee that you all are forming might be able to help here once we get some additional recommendations from the STAR Task Force and Dr. Clark and her team. But reducing the average number of days absent for all students by 2 days per student and reducing the percent of chronically absent students by 5 percentage points. And Dr. Singleton is going to share a few of the endeavors here as we work through this.
Good morning again. And so as Dr. Brumley stated, we have 2 aggressive goals related to attendance that we are seeking to accomplish over the next few years. So we will continue to raise attendance awareness concerns by assisting school systems in the utilization of data to identify attendance trends that are occurring at their school. We will help them in developing these attendance teams by providing one-on-one support over the course of the next few years. Finally, we are going to make sure that all of those who are tasked with inputting data are trained so that data is accurate. We're going to provide support for family engagement because we know that that's an important part of making sure students are in school. And of course, the continued engagement of the STAR Task Force to provide solutions to reducing chronic absenteeism and truancy. We have a meeting coming up on the 25th to where we will talk about some of those priorities that we want to provide to the agency related to attendance. And then we will meet again in November prior to coming back to you all in December with some recommendations from the STAR Task Force.
Any questions, Mr. Morris?
No questions? All right, Superintendent?
Okay, so that concludes our presentation. I mean, we could have listed 100 themes on each item that is a key endeavor for these priorities with the work that we're doing as an agency. But I think you get a general sense of the areas that we think are the most important areas for our focus, our time and attention, and that's what we intend to be working through.
Ms. Holloway?
Thank you. It's a great presentation, but can we get a copy of this, the slides, please? The
Yes,
PowerPoint?
ma'am, and I think
Because we didn't have-
yes,
Oh.
ma'am, we'll do that.
All right, let's be sure to get Ms. Holloway a copy and any members that don't have
It's
it.
right in front of me. I didn't notice that was it. I was looking all
All
over.
right, check the
Thank
box
you.
on that one.
I appreciate
Mission
that. Sorry about
accomplished.
that.
Good, good, good. Any other questions before we close the discussion out for lunch?
Just one thing, if you don't mind, sir. Dr. Brumley, I know you have a great staff on trying to get the word out, but it seems to me, and then a lot of people I talk to and social media and things of that nature, not very many people know that U.S. News and World Report has us at 40th, and that we're making great strides. And I know y'all have a good department but is there, I don't know what else we can do. Is there something else that can be done for getting that word out, for people to start really catching on and say, hey, things are moving in the right direction and all that? Thoughts?
Well, I share that whenever I visit with communities and meetings, and I always say, like, this is good progress, but it's not where we need to be ultimately. I mean, it's just progress, and that's to be applauded for the educators in the field and the parents and the kids, but we still have a long way to go. So part of the challenge of communicating too much on that particular piece is the fact that the truth does remain that still too many kids aren't at proficient and too many schools still are labeled as academically failing. But I would encourage members, just whenever you're out with your constituencies, to continue to beat the drum around progress.
And then we've also got our Bridging the Gap tour, right, that's ahead of us, a lot of opportunity there as well to message. But great point. We do need to acknowledge the work in the field and the success in our state and continue to progress that progress.
And unfortunately, Mr. Birkin, too, negativity tends to sell more papers and gets more clicks. So even when we share that information with the news media at times, that's not of interest to them to the extent that other items are. It's just a challenge to get positive news out there. And so that's why we started, to all extents possible, using our own channels and trying to tell our own story.
Thank you. Members, I'm told we don't need a motion to go for lunch, so we're going to advise
Excuse
the
me.
public.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Holloway?
Where are we, can you reflect back on where are we on the agenda and what are we coming back to? Are we going to go over the BESE strategic plan?
Right, we'll continue our discussion on the strategic plan.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Yeah, so I want to advise the public that we'll break for lunch and we'll try to get back for 12:30.